Hi, my name is Adam Robles, and today I have a little bit of local news. Actually, here in Rutland, the Rutland Herald put an editorial out that asked the question: Is Vermont systemically racist? And spoiler alert, they say, of course it is, which was pretty much what I expected. But it's interesting; they actually think that Vermont is actually one of the most white supremacist states in the union, which is super interesting. And so I wanted to go through this article. I actually recorded this video already once, but it got a little too ranty for my liking. And so I just wanted to take a step back and sort of be a little bit more constructive about my response to it. So just full disclosure, I'm an ethnic minority. I live in Vermont, in Rutland, actually. And, so I started my family here a few years ago, and I've personally never experienced racism, not even one time. I've met a lot of people. Most of them have been white. There are not a lot of Latinos here. There are not a lot of Puerto Ricans here. There are not a lot of blacks here. I've not met many of them. However, I have never experienced racism, and so I was very interested to see the kind of evidence that the Rutland Herald pointed to say that not only was Vermont systemically racist, but also one of the worst states in the union as far as systemic racism. So let's go to the article. I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's a short article, and I will put it in the comments. I'll put a link in the description of this video so you can see I'm not taking anything out of context here. But let's take a look at how this starts, because it starts off with quite a doozy. Here's the article. The first sentence, I remember reading this very well. I laughed out loud. A report released in the days leading into the holidays was an appalling reminder that one of our state's most obvious flaws. Systemically, we have very little racial diversity. We are too white and too willing to be so. All right. So here's the thing. When I read that, the first thing that came to my mind is, so if we're too white, what is the appropriate level of white? What is the appropriate level of white? So you're saying we're too white, right? So you must know what the appropriate level of white is if we're already too white. And so, one of my favorite economists, he's a social commentator as well, awesome guy, you should look into him, Thomas Sowell. He has some questions that he asks whenever he's presented with a liberal idea, which, let's just be honest, this is a liberal idea. One of the first questions he always asks is, compared to what, right? And so we're too white, okay, compared to what, right? What is the right level of whiteness for Vermont to be? And so, see, this is a question that's not really answerable, right? Because typically what you'll hear is, oh, well, we want to reflect the general makeup of the United States better, right? And so if the United States is 80% white, then we want to be 80% white. But the question is, how do you know that's the correct level of white, right? That's not an answerable question, because it presents it as whiteness is a bad thing that we need to limit as much as possible, but you can't prove that, right? Because, here's the thing. I know plenty of white folks. They all seem like good people, right? They all seem like nice people, very helpful, very friendly, maybe a little bit reserved here in Vermont compared to down south, but I've never had a problem. I've asked plenty of white people questions, asked people for help, and they are very helpful. So are we too white? Compared to what? You can't really answer that question, at least not with any evidence or proof. Let's continue. I'm gonna skip some of this stuff here, but let's talk about. Let's talk. Actually, let's just continue reading. It says, in fact, the 20-page report was a joint effort between the Vermont Attorney General and the Human Rights Commission Task Force says we suffer from racial disparity, even though people of color are the fastest growing demographic in the state. Yet we remain the second whitest state in the nation, behind Maine. In 2016, there was a reported 33,728 racial and ethnic minorities in Vermont. Our total population is about 623,000. You don't need a calculator to see that percentage is ghastly. Again, compared to what, right? Ghastly. That's such an interesting word to use. Like, if you're horrified by that percentage, first of all, why are you horrified by that percentage? And second of all, how do you know that you should be horrified at that percentage, right? Again, compared to what? What's the right percentage of ethnic minorities to have? I don't know. I don't. That's not an answerable question. So let's skip here down to where it says, let's see here. The problem facing Vermont, here it is. The problem facing Vermont is systemic. It's not as easy as simply implementing some recommendations. Culturally, our state is racist, whether we want to admit it or not. The numbers do not lie. They suggest we have a problem. So I actually looked at this report that they're referring to here, because this is a very clear statement. Culturally, our state is racist, period. Okay? And so where do they get this, right? So I expected to see some examples of overt racism. I expected to see some examples of people saying things that were racist. But there's none of that. There's no evidence that the state is racist. What there is evidence of is that there are these disparities in education, or there's these disparities in healthcare or housing or things like that, or different neighborhoods having different ethnic minorities and stuff like that. And I agree. Let's just accept all of their numbers. The statistics are there. The statistical disparities are true. None of it proves racism. None of it does. Because a disparity is just that. It's a disparity. It tells you what is the case, what is actually the case. Now, racism is an explanation for that disparity. It's a why. So the statistical disparity tells you what, racism tells you why. And so one of the other questions that Thomas Sowell, the economist, always asks is, what hard evidence do you have? And this report, according to this report, there is no hard evidence at all that the state is racist. There's not a single example of someone doing something racist or being racist. Now, I'm not saying that they couldn't find an example of an individual doing something racist, but the claim here is that there's a systemic, rampant, institutional problem of racism in the systems of Vermont. And they have not provided a single example of that. And so I find that again, there's no evidence of racism, yet this article is just flat out saying we are racist, systemically racist. The next paragraph, stakeholders identified multiple methods of racism here, ranging from outright white supremacy and circling the wagons at levels of government to keep people of color out, or setting them up for failure via segregated neighborhoods and gentrification. It was widespread. So I went to the articles. That seems like evidence, right? So they say they have evidence of outright white supremacy, circling the wagons, trying to keep people of color out, segregated neighborhoods. And it makes it seem like there's evidence that Vermont has purposely segregated neighborhoods, that Vermont has purposely kept people of color out of the political process. And Vermont has actual white supremacists that are actually doing these things. But what I found out, according to the article, unless I'm reading this report wrong, what they did was they sort of just brainstormed ideas of what could be causing these disparities, and these were some of the ideas. So it's a lot of anecdotal evidence, right? Because it doesn't give you quotes or proof or evidence that these things have happened. It just says that they have happened. And I can think of lots of reasons for these disparities that have nothing to do with racism. Right? Like they said that having so few ethnic minorities is so ghastly, and essentially they say it proves that we're racist. I can think of a ton of reasons why blacks or Hispanics would not want to live in Vermont that don't involve racism, right? And so I'm not saying I have evidence of these things, but why can't it just be the result of preferences, right? Why can't a black or a Hispanic person just prefer not to live in Vermont? Like it almost takes away the agency of ethnic minorities. It's like, well, we know that there are blacks and Hispanics dying to come to our state, but they won't because we keep them out purposely. We segregate them. We do that kind of stuff purposely. First of all, no, you don't know that because there's no proof of it. And second of all, how do you know we're dying to come in? Or have you heard people that say, yeah, I'd really like to live in Vermont, but, you're keeping me out? You know what I mean? Like, I have a hard time believing that there's even one person that said that, or one person that's felt that way. That, look, I really want to live in Vermont, but people are keeping me out. See, when I decided to move to Vermont, you know what I did? I just moved here. I didn't ask anyone's permission. I didn't get any pushback at any level. When I went to the DMV, they didn't say, yeah, Hispanics are supposed to live in this other neighborhood, so maybe you should consider when I tried to get a rental house. I didn't. maybe you'd prefer this neighborhood, or I didn't experience anything like that, not even once, not even almost. And so again, you don't have any proof, so why are you saying that we're just racist just because of these disparities? There's plenty of other reasons that these disparities could exist that have nothing to do with racism. Let's see here. Let's go to the end here. People of color have waited too long for the equality we promise in word but not deed. It is time to remedy that wrong, the authors wrote. We need to stop embarrassing ourselves by being systemically racist here and taking right steps towards being more inclusive, tolerant, and accepting. Here's some of the steps that they want to take. I'm gonna go up to the top here. Right here, the report highlights how Vermont lacks incentives, mentors, support, and/or pathways to success for minorities and people of color to come to Vermont or stay here. In the end, the report concludes a strategy needs to be put into place to examine disparities in education, labor, and employment, access to housing and healthcare, as well as economic development, the building blocks of any society. So here is the last thing I want to say. Again, it makes it seem like blacks and Hispanics and people of color do not have equality in Vermont. Systemically, like they're not given that. And that's false. That's false. You cannot point me to one right that white people have that Hispanics and blacks do not have in Vermont. You cannot do it. You cannot do it. Okay, so you have no evidence of that. Secondly, it also gives you this impression that in order for blacks and Latinos and people of color to be successful, we need mentors, we need incentives, we need support, and we need extra help. We need extra credit. And let me just be blunt. That is absolutely, awfully racist. See, I know a lot of blacks and Hispanics, and maybe some people in Vermont don't know that many because not that many live here, right? But guess what? The blacks and Hispanics that I know are just as capable in business, just as smart, just as intelligent, just as capable of doing anything that white people can do. We do not need white mentors. We do not need white assistants. We do not need white support or pathways provided by white people in order to succeed. That's not something that we absolutely need. Now, that's not to say that people can't have charity. If a black or Hispanic neighbor needed some charity, yeah, you can give them some charity. Absolutely, give them a little help, a little assistance. Everyone needs a little assistance every now and then, even white people. But here's the thing: to say that we aren't here because you aren't helping us enough, that you're not giving us a little bit of a leg up, that you're not mentoring us, it infantilizes us, man. It infantilizes us. It makes us seem like children. Like, oh yeah, we need a little bit of help. We need that extra support, Not white people don't need that support because they're capable, but Hispanics and blacks, we need to help them a little bit. That's insulting, man. That's insulting. We absolutely are capable of every single thing that a white person is capable of, and so it's not that we're not here because you're not helping us enough. Why take away our agency like that? That's the other thing. Again, why is it that a group of white people know what blacks and Hispanics want and where they want to live, but Hispanics and blacks don't? Because I chose to live in Vermont for a variety of reasons, right? Lots of people do not choose to live in Vermont, also for a variety of reasons. And I'll admit, when I moved here, there are definite downsides of being a Vermonter. Definite downsides. It's expensive. Taxes are too high. And there's not a lot of businesses here. If I all of a sudden needed a job, I'd be hard-pressed to find one. I'd probably have to move if I couldn't make ends meet anymore. All of these are reasons why someone wouldn't want to live in Vermont. But you see, no one wants to deal with the real issues here, right? No one wants to deal with the tax rates. No one wants to deal with the lack of incentive for businesses to be here, right? No one wants to deal with that. Instead, they want to fight this boogeyman of white supremacy, right? I gotta be honest with you. If Vermont is the second most white supremacist state in the United States of America, we need to do something differently with our politics, right? All you liberals who vote Democrat every single election, maybe you should consider the fact that you're saying that the state is so racist, yet it's also so liberal. Maybe we ought to do something different. Now, I'm not a Republican, right? I'm not a Republican, so I would never tell you to vote Republican. But maybe it's time for a change, man. If we're this racist, and we got this way through liberal politics, maybe it's time to do something different. And so that's all I wanted to say here. I hope this one was a little less ranty than my last video, but look, if you're going to say we're systemically racist, if you're going to bear false witness, or you're going to bear witness like that against the white people of Vermont, then you better have a good reason as to why. You need to have good evidence, solid evidence that we're racist here in Vermont. But you also have to have a reason why you would say we're too white or we need more Hispanics. Compared to what, right? Also, you need to have real good ideas about how to fix it, right? Because the other question that Thomas Sowell always asks is, okay, we're going to fix this problem. Okay, at what cost? At what cost? Because nothing's free. There's always trade-offs, right? So if we're going to fix this supposed problem of whiteness in Vermont, at what cost? What's it going to cost us? What are we going to do about it? So that's pretty much all I have today. And again, like, look, I'll tell you right now, this article makes Rutland, Vermont, or Vermont in general, seem like the most racist place that you could imagine. There's no evidence for it, and I got to tell you, anecdotally, I've never experienced it. And so white Vermonters, not everyone thinks that you're racist. Not everyone thinks that you are an evil, discriminatory bigot. But the Rutland Herald apparently does. And so I would probably write to them and say, hey, okay, if you're going to call us racist, we're going to need a little bit more than just statistical disparities, because there could be lots of reasons for statistical disparities that have nothing to do with me being racist. And so I would recommend writing to them. I would recommend voicing your opinion here. And hey, from one Latino to a bunch of white people here in Vermont, I love living here. Thanks for your hospitality, and I appreciate everyone that I've met. Love you guys. God bless.